on deep dive number 3 of module 3. We're going to focus on our vocabulary words today, and today we're going to look at civil rights. So you will need your notebook. We're going to add to our vocabulary section, so notebook and a pencil. If you need to go get those items, go get them now. You can also grab your Martin Luther King Jr. And the March on Washington book. I will be reading from that book today. Okay, I want you to think about what is different about these two ideas. Here's our first one. I want to eat dessert daily. It is my right. And I have a right to food and water. What is different about these two ideas? Did you think about how eating dessert daily is not a right? It's a privilege and it's nice to have, but it's not something that is a right. However, I have a right to food and water. People need that to survive. They need food and they need water. So a right is something each person deserves or is allowed to have, get, or do. Okay, I'm going to read a couple more examples, and I want you to think about if it is a right or if it's not a right. So if it's something every person deserves, or if it's not something you really deserve, it's not really something that you need. Here's our first one. People have a right to education. Is that something people deserve? Do people deserve to learn? Yes. People have a right to arrive at school when they want. No, that's not something that is a right. People have a right to not wear a seatbelt. Oh, I hope you said no, that is not a right. People have a right to clean drinking water. Now, is that something people deserve, something that they need to survive? Yes, they do need clean drinking water to survive, so that is a right. And people have a right to be treated fairly. Do you think people deserve to be treated fairly? Yes, that is also a right. Okay, so we're going to look at civil rights and how civil rights are the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. So I'm going to reread, our focusing question. What injustices did people face before the Civil Rights Act of 1964? In order to answer this question, we need to know, well, what does civil rights mean? I'm going to reread page 44, and then I'll reread page 46. So if you have your book and you want to follow along, I will be on page 44, or you can just listen and follow along on the screen. But I want you to think about, what do you remember about the Civil Rights Act from Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington? We've read it a couple times now, so I want you to think about, what do you remember about the Civil Rights Act? Okay, let's see if we can remember a little more when I reread this page. 1 year later, a law passed. It is called the Civil Rights Act of 1964. From now on, there cannot be restaurants for whites only. There cannot be separate seating for black people and white people in any public place. People cannot be kept apart just because of their skin color. So the Civil Rights Act made it illegal or against the law to separate people based on skin color. This law was created in 1964, and it made it easier for everyone to vote. In your vocabulary notebook, we're going to add the word law. I have the word law right here. So we're going to add this to your vocabulary notebook. We're going to write law, and it is a rule made by the government that people must follow. So you can pause the video here to add this to your vocabulary section of your notebook. What are some examples of laws you know? It is a law that children have to ride in special seats in cars. It's a law that drivers must stop at stop signs. And it is also a law that children in the United States must go to school. Those are all rules made by the government that people must follow. Okay, let's look at the word civil rights. You can keep your vocabulary book open because we're going to focus on this word first, and then we're going to add it to our vocabulary section as well if you don't have it yet. Civil rights are the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. So some things that in Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington that people wanted or were demanding were rules that people should be treated fairly. If you look at page 13 of your book, there are a bunch of signs or posters that people made, and I'll read some of the examples. One says, "We march for civil rights laws now. End segregated rules in public schools." Those are the only two I can read very well. So civil rights, again, we're writing this in our vocabulary section, are the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. So our main goal today was to add those two, civil rights and law, to our vocabulary section of our notebook today. So when you're done with that, you can, then you'll be done with the deep dive. So make sure you have both of those written in. If you need to go back in the video and pause longer, you are welcome to do that.